Nikke's official release is right around the corner, and today we're going over every deck you can build in this set. As of recording this video, the cards weren't yet available in the Bandai TCG Plus app, so I'm using the brand new EXBurst V3 website to build our decks. And honestly, it looks great and has so many cool new features. Outside of the deck builder itself, I'm really excited to see a competitive tab with the tournament hub where you can find tons of data for the tournaments that are submitted through the site. I also love the new look of the profile, which you can customize quite a bit more, and there's even a level and experience bar for how much you contribute to the website with things like creating decks and rating cards. Make sure to check out the new and improved site if you haven't yet. Also, don't forget after this video to contribute to the second Union Arena survey I've thrown together. It takes a few minutes to fill out, and once we get enough responses, I'll post the data for you all, going over the community's thoughts and suggestions for the game. The link is in the description. And lastly, with all of these deck videos, the lists shown in this video are from Union Arena Japan, and these lists are meant to be used as a guide and starting point. If you disagree with the list or have a cool idea or tech, let everyone know in the comments. And if a card is in more than one deck list, we will only go over it the first time, and I will provide my honest opinions on the decks and suggest other cards for each color. Now let's go ahead and hop into the decks, starting with yellow and the counters deck. And as you can see at the top of the graphic, there's a small chart going over the energy cost of all the cards in this deck at a quick glance. This deck is all about the counters affinity and using events to gain abilities. Starting with the zero cost Marion, who can help filter through your deck with her ability and trigger. Then we play the zero cost Rapi, who has a get trigger, and our final zero cost we have the Anise. She's got nullify impact, and just like the last card, she's a target for raiding. The next card is the one cost Rapi, who you may recognize from the store tournament participation pack. When she's played, she can rearrange the top two cards of your deck or place them on the bottom of your deck if you don't want either of them. This next card is special. The 2-cost Marion has a draw trigger and is actually a promo import from Japan that wasn't initially in the main set for them. So on release, our decks will be a bit stronger than theirs were. She does have two abilities, first gaining 1000 BP when you have 3 or more other counters affinity cards on your field, and then when played, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 memory or counters affinity card among them and add it to your hand. Place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you added a character card to your hand, place 1 card from your hand into the sideline. So she can go ahead and add memory for free, but if you add a counter affinity character card, then you do need to discard. The next card is the 2-cost Helm, who gains additional yellow energy generation when active. Then our other double energy for the deck is the 3-cost Anise with step and an active trigger. Our color trigger for the deck is the 4-cost Neon, who gains damage 2 and the when attacking ability to draw and place a card from your hand into the sideline if you've used an event this turn. For our first raid, we have the 4-cost Rapi, who has 2 abilities. When played, if you have used an event card this turn, choose up to 1 counters affinity card on your field and move it to the other line. And then when attacking, you may place 4 event cards from your sideline into the removal area. If you do, choose up to 1 counters affinity card on your field other than Rapi and switch it to active. So this card can help you attack in extra time, which can be crucial in the right situations. The next raid is the 4-cost Anise, who has nullify impact and double block. She also says when played, draw 2 cards, then place 2 cards from your hand into the sideline. If you have used an event card this turn, 3 instead. So you'd be able to draw 3 cards instead of the 2, and then still discarding 2 cards, which is pretty nice filtering on a raid card. Then we have our final raid, which is the 4-cost Rapi that is technically the starter deck Rapi. Just like with our Code Geass set, Japan received a starter deck for this set, but the English version of the game has decided to place all the cards from the decks directly into the set. So since we won't have a starter deck, we can just refer to her as the Impact Rapi, since when you have 3 or more other counter affinity cards, she gains impact. She also has 2 other abilities. When played, look at the top 4 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 yellow event card among them and add it to your hand. Place the remaining on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you placed a card into your hand, place 1 card from your hand into your sideline. And then when attacking, choose up to 1 other counters affinity card on your field. It gains 1000 BP until the end of the turn. Then finally, moving on to our events, we have Anise level up. This card is honestly really cool in combination with the raid. This card says draw a card and reduce the AP cost for the next Anise card you use from your hand this turn by 1. So you can draw a card, then play the raid for free, drawing an additional 3 cards, and then discard 2. This just helps her ability occur more often, which is awesome, especially since it gives you that extra card for the discard. It also has a draw trigger in case you hit it out of life. For our final cards, we have the final trigger and AP restand of the deck, and the special trigger codename Red Hood, which pairs with Rapi to sideline a 5k or less BP character. Just like other decks that revolve around events, this deck has some explosive turns, but relies on seeing those events. So if you happen to not see them or use them too early, you may be in a tough spot. Moving on to our next deck, we have Modernia. And if you like the playstyle of Blue Mustang from Full Metal Alchemist but want a better color trigger, then look no further. Let's hop in, starting with the 0-cost Crow, who is played for her draw trigger. Then we have the 3-cost Marion, who has the when played ability to look at the top 7 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 memory card among them, and add it to your hand. Place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order, and if you added a card to your hand, place 1 card from your hand into the sideline. In this deck, we add a singular copy of the Marion color trigger, who has Nullify Impact, and the Win sidelined ability to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 memory card or 1 counter's affinity card with 3 or less required energy among them, and add it to your hand. Place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you added a character card to your hand, place 1 card from your hand into the sideline. So this one will also grab you a memory card for free. Then we finally get to the raid Modernia, who raids on Marion. She has 2 abilities. First, when she's played, to add any number of memory cards from your sideline to your hand, and then when attacking, choose up to 1 character with 1000 or less BP on your opponent's front line and sideline it. You may place any number of event cards from your hand into the sideline. If you do, for each event card placed into your sideline from this ability, add 1000 to the BP range of the character you may choose with this ability. So her ability is pretty much exactly like Roy Mustang, except for the fact that she must place events into the sideline instead of any card. It's slightly more restricting, but being able to just add the memories back is huge. And the last new card in the deck is the Event Memory, which is the card that can be added back from her ability. This card says you can only use 1 memory card per turn. Draw 2 cards, then place 1 card from your hand into the sideline. If you place an event card into the sideline with this ability, choose up to 1 of your AP cards and switch it to active. It also has an active trigger just in case you see it in life. I imagine this deck will probably turn out to be the most powerful of the yellow decks, as just like with Blue Mustang, being able to sideline cards after the turn your card is played is an incredibly strong ability. But moving on to our last yellow deck, we have Yuni and Viper. You'll notice this deck doesn't have any SRs in it, so it will be extremely cheap and easy to make since most of these cards aren't even played in either of the other decks. This deck gains abilities by resting characters on your front line, which is similar to the green decks in Kaiju number 8. Let's check it out. The first card is the 0-cost Viper, who has an activate main ability. Once per turn, you can only activate this ability if this active character on your front line has been switched to resting by one of your abilities this turn. All characters with 1000 or more BP on your opponent's front line lose 500 until the end of the turn. Next is the 0-cost Yuni, who is the raid target and has the get trigger. We then play the 1-cost Jackal, who can gain 1k BP once per turn if one of your other characters was switched from active to resting this turn. Next is the 2-cost Crow with an active trigger. She's got 2 abilities. When played, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 exotic or wardress affinity card among them, and add it to your hand. Place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you added a card to your hand, place 1 card from your hand into your sideline, and then activate main, switch to resting. Once per turn, switch 1 active character on your front line to resting. If you do, activate this character's when played ability. For our other 2 costs, we have the Yuni, who also has an active trigger. Her ability says choose up to 1 character with 3000 or less BP on your opponent's front line and switch it to resting. Then we have the one and only double energy of the deck, which is the 3-cost color trigger Viper. She can move an exotic or wardress affinity card to the other line when she's played. The next card is the 3-cost Action 2 Viper. She says, when played, if on the energy line, play up to 1 exotic or Warrior's Affinity card with 3,500 or less BP and 1 AP cost from your hand set to active onto your field. And then activate main, switch to resting once per turn. Switch 1 active character on your front line to resting. If you do choose 1 character on your field, it gains damage +1 until the end of the turn, and all characters with 1,000 or more BP on your opponent's front line lose 500 BP until the end of the turn. She does have the get trigger, so you might be able to cut this card down to 2 or 3 if you need. But honestly, it's pretty good in the deck. Then we play the 3-cost Mihara, who has Nullify Impact and an Activate Main ability. Once per turn, you can only activate this ability if this active character on your front line has been switched to resting by one of your abilities this turn. Choose 1 character on your opponent's field and switch it to resting. I like that this one specifically says field instead of front line. Then moving into the 4-cost, we have the Jackal, who has an active trigger. Her ability says once per turn, you can only activate this ability if this active character on your front line has been switched to resting by one of your abilities this turn. Switch this character to active, which essentially gives you the opportunity to activate a lot of abilities for free, and this card will still be able to attack. Then we have our one and only raid in the deck, the 4-cost Yuni. When played, you may switch 1 active character on your front line to resting. If you do, draw a card and reduce the BP of all characters with 1,000 or more BP on your opponent's front line by 500 BP until the end of the turn, and then activate main if on the front line once per turn. Choose 1 character on both your front line and energy line and swap them. This second ability is to help you with attackers being able to still switch something to resting in the front and then just swap it out for something that can attack from the energy line. For our last card, we have the special of the deck, the Weak and the Strong, which can choose up to 1 character on your opponent's front line and switch it to resting. It will remain set to resting the next time it would be switched to active. If you have 3 or more exotic affinity cards on your field, choose up to 1 character on your field and switch it to active. Overall, this deck is one of those that requires you to play multiple cards to be able to do things that other decks can do with a single card. Unfortunately, that being said, I think this one will easily be one of the weaker decks in the set. Now, let's look at a few cards you could consider for the yellow decks. First up are these 3. There's specifically some options with active triggers meant to help out the counters deck and the raid Anise with double block. Definitely consider looking for some room for some copies of these. For some other suggestions, we have the 5-cost Action 2 Anise. This one can be used in both the Modernia and counters deck. It's just another card to consider if you find yourself wanting more 4Ks. As for reward, this one can be great as a 1 or 2 of in the Yuni Viper deck. It enables some plays by switching your cards to resting and then draws you an additional 3 cards. That's it for yellow. Moving on to green. First up, we have Laplace. This deck gains additional abilities based on if you have Missilous Affinity cards on your field, as well as having characters with 4,000 or more BP on either field. Let's go over the cards. First up is the 0-cost Alice with the Get trigger. She's also a raid target. Then the 0-cost Pepper, who can filter through the deck with her ability and trigger. And then we have the 0-cost Laplace, who also has a Get trigger and is a raid target as well. Next up is the 1-cost Laplace, who has Step and gains 1,000 BP if you have another Missilous Affinity card with 4K or more BP on your front line. This deck plays the 2-cost Soda, who generates an additional green energy when active. For our color trigger, we have the 2-cost Litter. She says, when played, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Missilous Affinity card among them and add it to your hand. Place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you added a card to your hand, place 1 card from your hand into the sideline, and then activate main, switch to resting, choose 1 other character on your field. It gains 1,000 BP until the end of the turn. This card is super important with her Activate Main ability being able to consistently boost the BP of your characters on your field. For the next card, we have the Promo Eleg. She has an active trigger and says, when played, if there is a character with 4,000 or more BP on your opponent's field, reduce the AP cost of the next Missilous Affinity card you use from your hand this turn by 1. You can only activate this Eleg ability 1 time each turn. This is extremely beneficial to the deck and is a really nice addition, as this deck wants to have as many characters on the field as possible. For our next card, we have the 3-cost Julia, who draws a card if her attack is not blocked. And the next double energy card is the 3-cost Guilty, who gains 1,000 BP if you have another missileless affinity card on your front line with 4k or more BP. Now, you may be wondering why it seems these double energy cards have abilities to help them attack when they normally want to be on your energy line. That's because while you would probably prefer not to move it up unless absolutely necessary, you do still want the abilities of your other cards to be active. This just gives you even more 4k bodies as well. Now for our top end, first is the Alice raid, who says when played, look at the top 4 cards of your deck, play up to 1 green character card with 2 or less required energy and 1 AP cost among them, set to resting onto your field. Place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. After looking at the cards, you may place combined total of 2 face down cards under characters on your field into the sideline. If you do, 3 or less required energy instead. Now in this specific deck, that actually won't come up as there are no abilities to place face down cards underneath your characters in this list, as that specific ability is meant for the Tetra Line deck. So you'll only be able to play a card with 2 or less required energy when raiding this card. Next up for our 4Ks, we have the 4-cost Drake, who has an active trigger and the when attacking ability. If you have 2 or more other missileless affinity cards with 4,000 or more BP on your front line, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, place any number of them on top of your deck in any order, then place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. Then we have the 4-cost Action 2 Maxwell. It has a get trigger, so we're only playing 2 copies. This card can switch itself to active when you have 2 or more other 4K characters or higher on your field, and she also gives 3k to another character. And then finally, we have the 5-cost Raid Laplace. This character gains damage too if you have 2 or more other missileless affinity cards with 4k or more BP on your front line. Her when played ability lets you choose a character on your opponent's front line and move it to their energy line. This is pretty powerful if you're able to raid 2 of these in one turn and have her ability active, so both have damage too. It almost forces your opponent to block the damage too, especially since you'll most likely have other attacks going through as well. Lastly, we have the green final trigger and AP restand, along with the Laplace special, which can not only sideline characters, but also help you by potentially giving one of your characters 1k BP. This deck seems pretty cool with the strategy to just always be attacking with 4k or above characters. Now, jumping straight into the next deck, like I mentioned earlier, we have the Tetra Line deck, who also plays the raid Alice, but has a playstyle of its own to consistently buff their characters and gain abilities if there are cards underneath cards on your field. This deck also has a low required energy count, as you can see by the chart in the top corner. Starting off with Dola, who can give 500 BP to another Tetra Line affinity card while also placing the top card of your deck underneath it, and she also has a draw trigger in case she's in life. This list then plays the 1-cost Alice, who can place a card from under itself into the sideline to gain 1k BP when attacking. For the next card, we have the 1-cost Biscuit, who is the searcher of the deck, being able to look at the top 3 for a Tetra Line, as well as being able to place a card underneath a Tetra Line affinity card, and she also has a draw trigger. Then we have the 2-cost Blanc. Her when played ability can switch herself to active if she's on the energy line and you have a Noir on field. Then with her activate main, you can switch her to resting to give another Tetra Line affinity card 500 BP and a face down card from the top of your deck. Then speaking of, we have the Noir that the Blanc wants to see on the field. She has an active trigger and she's got an activate main if on the front line once per turn to place 1 face down card under this character into your sideline. If you do, choose up to 2 characters on your field, they gain 500 BP until the end of the turn, or if Blanc is on your field, all characters on your field gain 500 BP until the end of the turn instead. So both of these cards want to be on the field at the same time. Unfortunately, Blanc is a 2-cost and her ability is a when played, so in the early game, you may only be able to play the Blanc before the Noir, thus missing out on her ability. For the next card, we have Rupee, who can switch another character other than Rupee to active when attacking if you place 2 face down cards from your field into the sideline. She also has a draw trigger to help with consistency. We move to the color trigger of the deck, which is the double energy 3-cost Ludmilla. She has step and can draw you a card and place a face down card under a Tetra Line affinity card from your hand when she's played. For the final character, we have the 3-cost Alice, who can gain impact and has an active trigger. Then for the last card of the deck, we play the Alice and the Snow Queen special, which can choose either one or both abilities if you have Alice on your field. The first ability is to give a Tetra Line affinity card 2 KBP and impact 1, and the second ability is to choose a Tetra Line card, then draw a card, then you can place a card under it face down and switch the character to active. Unfortunately, this special doesn't remove any cards as well as the rest of the deck, so it's going to have a hard time against decks that will just need their cards to stick on the field a few turns. As for cards you could also consider within the green color, there honestly aren't too many I'd recommend, but you could look at playing this card in the Laplace deck as it's a card to help with the early aggression while also having nullify impact for late game. Now moving on to our final color, we have purple, starting with the Rapunzel deck. This deck relies on sidelining cards from your hand to gain a variety of abilities. Let's check it out. First, we have the 0-cost Scarlet, who has the active trigger. Then we have the 0-cost Rapunzel, who has a get trigger and is a raid target. And for our last 0-cost, we have the Modernia, who is able to help filter through the deck with her trigger and ability, as well as being there as a raid target. The next card is the 1-cost Rapunzel, who can switch a Pioneer affinity card to active if she is sidelined from your hand and you have 2 or less cards remaining in your hand. The next card is the 2-cost Snow White, who can draw a card if there are 2 or less cards in your hand when she's played. For our second 2-cost, we have Modernia, who has an active trigger and the win played ability to choose any character on your opponent's front line, and it will lose 1 KBP. Getting into the double energy, we have the 3-cost Rapunzel. She can look at the top 3 cards of your deck for a Pioneer card and add it to your hand. Then the last double energy in the deck, we have the 3-cost Scarlet, who can gain BP if you have 2 or less cards in your hand, and when she attacks, can choose a character to lose 1 KBP and places a card from your hand into the sideline after. This ability, just like the 2-cost Modernia, doesn't have any restrictions, so you could potentially sideline characters by reducing their BP to 0. For the color trigger of the deck, we have the Snow White, who has the activate main ability while on the front line to place 2 cards from your hand into the sideline to choose an opponent's character and have it lose all base abilities until your next turn. This is exactly like the 4-cost Raid Asta, completely removing the abilities from the cards, meaning your opponent can't even activate certain abilities if they wanted to pay the cost. Abilities like this are always sneaky good and can come up in some pretty cool situations. Now, for our first raid card, we have the Modernia, who can choose a character on your opponent's frontline and reduce their BP by 3000 when she's played. However, you do need to place all cards from your hand into the sideline. Risky ability, definitely, but she can sideline stuff with this ability, and if your hand is right, it's going to benefit you more than hurt you. The next card is the 5-cost Action 2 Scarlet, who comes into play active and has the activate main ability to once per turn place up to 3 cards from your hand into the sideline to gain abilities based on how many cards you discarded. 1 or more gives her the win attacking ability to draw up to 1 card, 2 or more gives her 1 KPP, and 3 gives her double attack. This is nice because if you're able to sideline 3 cards from your hand, giving her double attack, and you're able to attack both times, with her, she's replacing 2 of those cards that you just got rid of. Then for our final character, we have the 5-cost Raid Rapunzel, who has the win played ability to add a character other than Rapunzel from your sideline to your hand, and the win attacking ability to choose up to 1 character with 2000 or less BP on your opponent's frontline and switch it to resting if you have no cards in your hand. This deck then plays Encounter, the purple final trigger and AP restand, along with the event Pilgrims. This card allows you to draw 3 cards at the end of your attack phase and place a card into the sideline from your hand while also having an active trigger. The last card in the deck is the special Render Heaven and Earth Asunder, which can sideline something 5k or less by having 3 or less cards remaining in your hand. This deck is pretty cool and has some very nice plays, but may end up quite reliant on seeing multiple specific cards, as you need to consistently get rid of your hand while being able to refill it to gain abilities. Now for the deck that everyone is talking about, Dorothy. This deck has seen so much discussion because it's also known as the triggerless deck, which under normal Union Arena circumstances would be extremely bad. However, this deck plays a lot of cards that gain abilities when your life is hit and the card doesn't have a trigger. Let's check it out. The first card we have is the 0-cost Cecil, who can look at the top 7 cards for a purple site. Quite dangerous, but this site is very good, and we'll get into that one later. Next, we have the zero cost Dorothy, who gains 500 BP if there are no cards with triggers on your field. She's also a raid target. And then for our last zero, we have the Noah, who has Nullify Impact. And the reason we play a lower number of zero costs is because we play a lot of extra ones, including this Johann, who can search for an Inherit Affinity card from the top 3 cards of your deck for you. Then for our other one cost, we have Haran, who can draw and place a card into your sideline on play. Next is the 2 cost Isabel, who gains abilities based on how many cards without triggers are on your field. If you have 3 or more, she can't be blocked by 2k or less BP, and if you have 5 or more, she gains 1k BP during your turn. Moving on to our first double energy card, we have the 3 cost Dorothy. She gains 1k BP on your turn if you have 4 or more cards without triggers on your field, and when she attacks, if your opponent has 2 or more cards with triggers, you can choose another character on your field and it will gain 500 BP. For our other 3 cost character, we have Haran, who can play a character with 2 or less required energy and 1 AP, and also doesn't have a trigger for free set to resting. Now, getting into some cards that do have triggers in the deck, we have the 4 cost Dorothy. You may recognize this one from the store tournament kits as one of the winner cards. She says during your opponent's turn, while she's on the front line, if a card without a trigger is placed from your life into your sideline, you can draw a card once per turn. Now, this is a hard once per turn, so if you have 2 of these, you can only draw 1 since she's specifically named in that ability. For our first raid, we have Haran, who can gain impact if you have 4 or more cards without triggers on your field. She also has the when attacking ability to look at the top 2 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 card without a trigger ability among them, and add it to your hand, placing the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. Then comes the raid Dorothy. Her win plate ability will work if you have 4 or more cards without triggers, and can then choose an opponent's frontline character to sideline based on how many triggers your opponent has on their field times 1000. So if your opponent has 6 cards with triggers on their field, you can choose a character on their frontline with 6k or less with this ability. For Wings of Paradise, the special of the deck, all it requires is Dorothy to sideline a 5k or less, and then we finally get to the site, Eden. It's double energy and can reduce this card's required energy by 3 if you have 3 or more characters without triggers on your field. Also, during your opponent's turn, and when you take life and it has no trigger, this card can be switched to resting and you can add that card to your hand, essentially turning any one card from your life to a get trigger. Remember though, this is a hard once per turn, so having 2 of these only benefits for energy and not the ability to rest itself. Overall, I think this deck is quite interesting and a completely new way to play the game. Is it more risky? Yes. Is it necessary? No. Is it fun to gamble though? Absolutely. I think I'll definitely be trying this one out. Now, I do have one more list for you, and that is this one. Here we have another list for Dorothy that includes Scarlet for the top end of your deck. The only card we haven't gone over that's different in this one is the 2 cost Isabel, who generates additional purple energy while she's active. You will need this since you're playing more cards with over 4 energy. Now for some cards you may consider playing. I think either of these could be considered for the Dorothy deck, especially if you want to add in some additional energy generation or aggression in the early game. And then that's all for the decks I have for you today. Now that you're done watching, it's a perfect opportunity to take part in the newest community survey, which can be found in the description below. Let me know what decks you're looking at playing, and if you think any of these decks may shake up the meta. Make sure if you haven't already to hit that subscribe button for more Union Arena content, and I'll see you in the next video.